Okay, so once again, very good morning to all of you. So thank you for joining us for the fifth webinar series that we have. We are going to start today, and we have got an eminent speaker also today. So all of you can actually talk with him, interact with him, and get more information about structural engineering and basically evolution of structural engineering, as well as the prospects of structural engineering. So before we move on to the welcome address, I would request all the participants who are joining to please make sure your username is your full name. So this is also helpful in taking the attendance, as well as while you feed up your feedback form, it would be better for us to understand. So it's kind instruction to all of you. Kindly make sure you change your username as your full name. So now I request Giri, fourth year student, civil engineering, to kindly welcome our guest. Giri?
Hello.
Yes, yes, dear. You can speak.
Yes, sir. Good evening to all. I am going to give the welcome address today. So, Professor Kurian V. John is the Dean of Research and Development at Providence College of Engineering, Chenganallur, Kerala. He has 53 years of experience, mostly in the academic institutions in India, Oman, Nigeria, and Malaysia. Also, he has vast experience in teaching, consultancy, and research related to offshore structures. He was a professor in Civil and Environmental Engineering Department, University of Technology, Petronas. At UTP, he was the member of Offshore Engineering Center and was the director of the Mission-Oriented Research Cluster, Deepwater Technology. He has published about 250 research publications in journals and conference proceedings. He was the research advisor for almost 20 PhD scholars and guided many undergraduate final year students for their final year project related to structural engineering and offshore structures. He has completed 32 research projects of 10 crore rupees and 20 consultancy projects of rupees 2 crores. His current research topics include floating platforms and mooring lines, reliability and structural integrity of jacket platforms, hydrodynamic coefficient of cylinder groups, float over topside installations, motions and LCA for FPSOs, SCOR and VIV on pipelines. Welcome, sir.
Sir, you can start, sir. Kindly address the gathering, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Giri, for the great welcome. Dr. Anjali, Dr. Gautam, the coordinators of webinar series, and also all the dear participants. It's a great privilege for me to share on the evolution of structural engineering, scope and prospects for about 1 hour with the engineering students, especially civil engineering undergraduate and postgraduate students of VIT as well as other institutions, and also practicing engineers as well as academicians. It's a great privilege for me. I'll be sharing from my experience, not only from my experience. Yeah, my experience was mainly on teaching, even though I worked for small time in an industry. But mainly it was on teaching. But it is when you gave me the privilege, that is when I started preparing for that. You know, most of these materials are available, websites and many test books. But when I started preparing for me, that is when I really understood the evolution of structural engineering. So I'll be, in fact, my lecture will be just like going through experience or common experiences, the type of studies, the type of topics we faced when we did engineering fundamentals like that. So my plan is about 1 hour of presentation. I'll be taking you through a presentation and then probably leaving you time, giving you time for asking questions. And I hope I'll be able to clarify some of these questions based on my experience. So over to my presentation. Yeah. Presently I'm working at Providence College of Engineering. This picture that you see on this slide is our College of Engineering. And it's also an example of a work done by a good architect and with very tall columns, and it looks like some Mughal architecture like that. But it's a very good building and very challenging type of constructions. And you see the central dome there, and that's also is a very costly structure. It's a very big dome which can accommodate about 30 cars. And generally we hold meetings there at that place. And this is at the top of a hill and surrounded by lakes on the three sides. So you may be wondering, where is it, this institution? It's not near Taj Mahal, or it's not in another country. It's in our own country. It's in Kerala state, Alappuzha district. This place is called Chengannur. That's my own place also. Okay, let me take you through the slides now. My presentation will be mainly on these topics mainly. Briefly, about few slides on history of structural engineering, then the revolution from pre-scientific period, then main development started in 19th and 20th centuries, and then there is a recent one in the information age, and then future and scope, mentioning about some unique structures there. The photograph I have shown there, it's a very large structure. It's the largest floating facility in the world now. It's on the Australian west coast. It's about as long as 3 soccer fields there. So I'll be mentioning briefly about that. Okay. In fact, this history of structural engineering dates back to 2700 BC. Actually, the first major structure built was by the step pyramid for Pharaoh Djoser. It was built by the first architect in history known by name, that is Imhotep. And these were the most common major structures built by ancient civilizations. Because, the shape of pyramid is an inherently stable shape. We can increase the size to any amount or any quantity, not like other forms which are unstable. This form can be linearly increased in size proportion to the loads. Another notable engineering feat from antiquity still in use is the Connaught water management system, something like an aqueduct system, it was constructed around 1000 BC. Now that means it's about 3000 years old, and still it is 71 kilometers long, and still it is being used. It was in modern day Iran. At that time, we call it Medes, the predecessors of the Persian Empire. It's also one of the major developments in the civil engineering, structural engineering field there. That is a notable one, an old one. Now, summarizing the history, the few points worth noting is that, first of all, throughout ancient and medieval history, most architectural design and construction was carried out by artisans such as masons, carpenters, and they were the people in charge of the building also. So they were called master builders, carpenters and masons. They were the ones who were in charge of architecture as well as construction. There was no mention of theory of structures there, no calculations were done there, and how the structure stood was decided based on the evidence of what had worked before. If they construct, say, 2-story building, and then it is standing there, they continue to construct 2-story buildings like that, using the same materials. Then they try for another story. If it's successful, then they will be repeating that. That is, there were no such calculations or anything. It was based on the materials available at that time, that was mainly stones and timber. So the knowledge was retained by guilds, and this knowledge was not supplanted by advances. So structures were repetitive, and increase in scale was only incremental. So it was all repetition of the same type of structure. They constructed a structure, it was standing there. That means similar structures were built nearby, near places based upon the needs. So there is no record of, when you talk of structural engineering, mainly we think of engineering mechanics, mechanics of solids or strength of materials. So there was no record of such calculations there on the strength of materials or strength of members. But the profession of structural engineering really took shape only in the Industrial Revolution, that is 1760 to 1830. That is AD 1760 to 1830. Then only we took it as a profession of structural engineer with all the calculations. That was at the time of Industrial Revolution. That is when Renaissance, we call it Renaissance, when Renaissance happened historically. Actually, the physical sciences underlying structural engineering began to be understood in the 15th and 16th centuries. That is, physical sciences like calculus, like mathematics required for that, like the strength of materials and everything was understood during 15th and 16th. So now I'll be taking you through year by year, not year by year, phase by phase, through these developments, So I start with the pre-scientific revolution. So Imhotep, the first architect in history, built the pyramid for Pharaoh Joseph. That was the name of the Pharaoh. That is all recorded. It is all available with all those documents there. So pyramids were the most conceived structures in ancient because its structural form was inherently stable like that. So, and it can be scaled to any dimension easily. That was the first one. Remember, it is 2700 BC. Imhotep, that was the name of the first architect in Egypt. It is called step pyramid. You can see the size of that, the photograph there, the sketch there. It is stone over stone like that. It is step pyramid. Then in 2560 BC, the Great Pyramid of Giza was built. It remained the largest man-made structure for millennia until the rise of towers in the 19th century. Look at that, you would have seen in some of these, this is the Giza, the Great Pyramid, and near that there is, this is called, probably you would have read about all those things, Great Sphinx. That is the statue. This pyramid also made of limestone, and they used basalt and granite also. This Great Sphinx is about 130-meter height, and this is having the face of a human being and the face of a king actually. There is no definite record of which king he's talking of, but the face of a king and the body of a lion, that is Great Sphinx. You would have studied in some of the historical books like that. So probably some of you, there is a masterpiece, great famous film called Ten Commandments. I remember when I was schooling in Chenganur, at that time, from school, all the students were taken to the nearby theater for seeing that great film, Ten Commandments. That is when we saw the Egyptian slaves the Hebrew slaves were working for Egyptian King Pharaoh. And there it is shown, these pyramids and these things was shown there very clearly when they were constructing that. And they were using labor. And you know that at that time they were using labor was lifting stones and everything, all made of these pulleys and lever and cable system, and using man labor, human labor. That was it. Okay, 3rd century BC. Now we'll be seeing some of the familiar names which we studied in our undergraduate studies. Archimedes published his work, 3rd century BC. His calculations on areas and centers of gravity of various geometric figures, including triangles, paraboloids, and hemispheres, underpin most of the mathematics and principles of structures in modern structural engineering. So that is the first published work on any of these things. On this structural engineering, we can say this is the first published work, 3rd century BC, by Archimedes. His calculations on areas, volumes, centers of gravity of various shapes. 1st century BC, Vitruvius Vitruvius recorded in his De Architecture, the name of the book, the methods, materials, and machines used by ancient Romans to build structures such as aqueducts, aqueducts for transporting water. Thermae means thermal baths. They were using thermal baths at that time, and these were to be constructed using structural engineering methods like that. Columns, lighthouses, defensive walls, and harbours. So at that time, the constructions were all using non-available materials and available technology. Even though the technology was not written down and they did not know the mechanics of all those things, but they were using practices which are known there, using, that is, limiting to the spans, limiting to the heights of columns, spans of beams made of stones or made of timber like that. That was what they were using. So ancient Romans were, we have heard in history also, they were very good because the Roman empires were expanding, they were building roads, bridges, and all these structures like that. So there it is recorded, 1st century, the name Vitruvius has recorded in his book, the methods, materials, and machines used by ancient Romans. So they were building structures such as aqueducts, thermae, that is thermal baths, columns, lighthouses, defensive walls. They were warriors and they were expanding their territories. They were always using defensive walls and harbours because the main mode of transportation was by ships. So they were having harbours also constructed of the available technology at that time. 1st century BC, the ancient Romans made great bounds in structural engineering, pioneering large structures in masonry and concrete, many of which are still standing today. They have used concrete also, but not using the type of cement that we are using now. They were using some type of binders, some type of stones like that, but they were using the principle of concrete, but not the Portland cement. Portland cement was developed only later. 11th to 14th century AD, that is when large structures, like this is a circular dome-shaped structure or cylindrical structure, but the side thrust was supported by this type of buttresses, they call it this type. All these were made of stones. So during the high Middle Ages, builders were able to balance the side thrust of walls. These are walls, that is cylindrical buildings. These side thrusts were balanced by these flying buttresses and side walls to build tall, spacious structures. This is tall, spacious structure supported by these type of buttresses at intervals. You can see another one behind that. And their connections were using iron pins. The stones were connected using iron pins. You can see some example here. They were connected using iron pins. These were stone, special type of stones, quarried and shaped and to suit these purposes. That was from 11th to 14th century AD. 1630, this is a familiar name for us. You can see the sketch there, gravity, mass, inertia, like that term. So that is where we know of these terms now. Galileo Galilei published, this is name of the book, name of the paper, Dialogues Relating to Two New Sciences, where he outlined the sciences of strength of materials. That is what we call these days mechanics of solids or solid mechanics. Strength of materials and motion of objects. So that is when we talked about dynamics is coming there, motion of objects. So two new sciences. That is what Galileo published two new sciences, dialogues relating to. So the principles of mass, inertia, gravity, everything there. So this work marked the beginning of structural analysis. That is 1638. We are beginning the structural analysis there in Galileo. He is the one who published this book. You are very much familiar about this person, Hooke's law. The first thing that we studied in strength of materials there, stress by strain is modulus of elasticity, capital E. That is within the limit of proportionality. It is very close to the elastic limit, very close to the yield stress. You can see the sketch shown there. That is when a force is applied, it elongates by X. So we can measure the stress and strain and find out the modulus. When the force is double the force, the displacement is, the elongation is double x. That is what is shown here. This is Robert Hooke. His first statement of Hooke's law provided a scientific explanation of elasticity of materials and their behavior under load. That is 1676. Now 1687, Isaac Newton, very famous. You know that his three laws. That is what we started in study statics and dynamics. Isaac Newton's three laws. That is what we always remember. And especially third law. To every law, every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. I used to tell my students, this is applicable only for structural engineering, but in actual life, you should not react. Okay, look at this book. Isaac Newton published Philosophy Naturalis Principia Mathematica. That's a name wherein his laws of motion provided an understanding of the fundamental laws governing built structure. That is where he published these three laws of Newton. And then Newton joined with Gottfried Leibniz. They developed, they developed independently the fundamental theory of calculus, which is considered the most important mathematical tools in engineering. You know that every calculation, mechanics of solids, or strength of materials, or structural analysis, we always make use of calculus. You know, the differential of shear forces, UD load, differential of bending moment is shear force. Different when you integrate y displacement, we get that is EA into d squared y by dx would equal to m. You know how to calculate deflection and slope, always starting from the fundamental bending equation there. All these things. So theory of calculus is the fundamental important mathematical tool in engineering. Later 1750, Leonhard Euler and David Bernoulli. These are also familiar names for us, Euler and Bernoulli. They developed the Euler-Bernoulli beam equation. That is a fundamental beam equation. E into d squared y by dx squared, or E by I equal to E by R equal to M by I, like that. All these equations were developed by them. The fundamental theory underlying most structural engineering design, developed by Euler and Bernoulli. Then Bernoulli and Jean Bernoulli also developed the theory of virtual work. I know that's a basic fundamental for a finite element analysis. The theory of virtual work, any structural analysis, a tool that uses equilibrium of forces and compatibility of geometry in solving structural problems. All of you remember, you know, those who are students in especially third year, second year, third year onwards, you know that there are different types of methods of analysis. Basically, there are two methods, force method and displacement method. Force method uses, and both these methods, they use equilibrium of equations, equilibrium of forces, as well as compatibility condition. So I'll talk about that later when you come to another slide. You know, force method, there is a misconception or a misunderstanding among many students. They're not very clear about these two methods. That I may be giving a little idea when we come to that. In 19th and 20th centuries, the Ditherington flax mill in Shrewsbury, England was built. It was the first building to use, now you see materials are developing. It was the first building to use cast iron as its interior frame. Till that time, only masonry or stones or timber were used, or the concrete using the available cement at that time was used. But that was in 1797, they used first building using cast iron. In 1804, Belper Northmole, the world's first fireproof building was built. This first fireproof building was built making use of the cast iron building there. So they used the principles available at that time and made sure that the building was fireproof. And then 1824, Portland cement was patented by engineer Joseph Aspley. So that's the most important, that's a great development there. Portland cement was developed in 1824 by engineer Joseph Astley. It is the most common type of cement in general use around the world even today. Any cement we call it, there may be different brand names, but all these come under Portland cement criteria. It is related to the place and the type of stone there that was used there, Portland cement. You can refer to the websites and see why it is called Portland cement. 19th and 20th centuries, Claude Louis Navier published the elastic theory of beams. This is the elastic theory I mentioned about, the bending of beams. And the fundamental derivation of the bending equation. When you derive this E by R equal to M by I is equal to sigma by Y, that equation, this is all based on the elastic theory of beams, where you use bending. And again, this person is very famous. We can be called the founder of modern structural analysis, because he is the one to first highlight that the duty of a structural engineer is not to understand the final failed state of a structure, but to prevent that failure in the first place. It's very important. Till that time, it was only the structural engineer or the engineer for that name purpose, the engineer, whoever is in charge of the work, he was only interested, or he was able to only find out the failed state of a structure. But now this Navier is making it clear that he highlighted that the duty of an engineer should be not to just understand the failed state, but to prevent that failure in the first place. He is the one who established the elastic modulus, capital E, for a direct stress as the property of a material to resist being deformed elastically when a stress is applied to that. So the stiffness and flexibility criteria and everything, depending upon the deflection of the deflection of a beam or a slab, all these things depend upon the elastic property of the material, elastic modulus, capital E. So he was the one, Navier was the one who established that. Many are considering him as the founder of modern structural analysis. So remember, it was in 1826. It's just 200 years now, almost 200 years when it was established. That is when the principles all came together and for the benefit of structural engineers. 19th and 20th century, again 1858, Henry de Siemens successfully completed the conversion of cast iron into cast steel. Remember, that's a great development there. They were using only cast iron and later wrought iron. And then this was in 1858, they developed cast steel, which is the main building material now. Actually, cast steel is the main building material now for tall buildings. Concrete and steel are the main building materials now. So it was in 1858 the steel was developed, cast steel was developed. And that material eventually replaced wrought iron and cast iron as preferred metal in construction. Some of you may remember, I'll be mentioning that, and in your brochure also, flyer also, the figure of Eiffel Tower is given. Many of us may be under the impression that that is made of steel, but no, that is made of wrought iron. So I'll be discussing that now. 1867, Joseph Monnier filed several patents. That is when he started using steel mesh in reinforcement for concrete system. So he filed several patents for tubs, slabs, and beams that use his steel mesh reinforcement and concrete system. Steel mesh reinforcement. So that is when the principle of reinforced concrete came into practice. So this led to the creation of the Monnier system of reinforced structures. That is when they started to use reinforcement steel bars for treating for solving the problem of concrete's inability to take tension. So that is when steel bars were located in areas of tension in a structure. So that is a very important development, reinforcement structure, 1867, reinforced concrete. In 1885, William Le Baron Jenney built the Home Insurance Building in Chicago, the first metal framed building and first skyscraper in the world. It is the Home Insurance Building that is made up of metal framed building. You know, frame is beam and column together connected by braces and everything. That's a framed structure. And this is the first framed building and first skyscraper in the world. It's 1885. Now I was talking about Eiffel Tower. You can see that is at different stages of construction. But the wrought iron, it is made of wrought iron. Eiffel Tower was built by Gustave Eiffel and Maurice Quetelet to demonstrate the potential of building structures using iron. Even though steel construction was already popular in many first world countries, they constructed this to show the potential of using iron, wrought iron, even though it was replaced by steel later. So remember, civil engineering students and civil engineers, Eiffel Tower is not made of steel. It is made of wrought iron. It's a very important information. 1928, that is when pre-stressed concrete comes into play. Eugene Freycinet, you are familiar with that term, Freycinet. Undergraduate students, probably very little of pre-stressed concrete is being taught to them. He pioneered and patented pre-stressed concrete, a method which is still being used to overcome the inherent weakness of concrete structures in tension. I remember when I was taught this pre-stressed concrete, or also when we were students, at that time it was 1 year after school, 1 year of plus, instead of +2, it was 1 year of pre-university and then 5-year engineering course. At that time, we underwent 5-year engineering course. Even then, pre-stressed concrete was only very little taught for us in our undergraduate syllabus. I think same is the case even now. In the 4-year undergraduate course, we have so many courses, and maybe there is a one module of pre-stressed concrete there. Sometimes even less than that. Actually, I studied about pre-stressed concrete when I went for postgraduate studies. I remember Professor Srinivasa Rao in IIT Madras. He is an expert in pre-stressed concrete. He's the one who taught us. And he was telling this, I think it is mentioned in this a very good book on T.Y. Lin, pre-stressed concrete. A very important principle which have been found very useful for me when I teach students about that. Pre-stressed concrete. The very important principle is that it is just like prevention is better than cure. You know, for reinforced concrete, for concrete, tension is like a sickness. So when you are sick, you treat that cure that by taking medicine. That is by putting reinforced concrete. You put steel where there is tension. That is why reinforced concrete. So simply supported beam, bottom tension. So when it is loaded, bottom is subjected to tension. So the main reinforcement is at the bottom. But pre-stressed concrete is like prevention. What pre-stressed concrete does is, it's like giving a preventive medicine. That means before the load is applied, it's already given some compression there. There's a prevention. So even when the tension comes, it doesn't exceed the compression comes nearly zero. That means the whole structure doesn't experience tension at all. That is a prevention. That is why initially applying compression. Of course, compression is not uniformly applied depending upon the design of the pre-stressed concrete beam like that. So this is the principle of pre-stressed concrete. When you teach students, you can use this. Remember this, that will be able to impress the students greatly about this. So pre-stressed concrete is, you are preventing the sickness by applying medicine, not applying medicine, by applying compression early there. So when you apply compression throughout the beam, when the bending produces tension, the tension value does not exceed does not become more than zero like that. So remember that there's a very important principle. So Priestess concrete was developed in 1928. He is the one who patented that. Praisenet. Of course, now it is developed to a great extent. Almost all the long span bridges, flyover bridges, everywhere they are using standard Priestess beams. Deep beams are used. And the methods of construction and design have become so common, so easy, so established now. 1930, Professor Hardy Cross is a very important name. When you talk of moment distribution, Hardy Cross is the person who developed that. In fact, that's a great development in structural engineering. 1930, remember that. Professor Hardy Cross developed moment distribution method. Only 90 years now. A tool used to approximate the real stresses of complex structures quickly and accurately. Remember moment distribution? You know about slope deflection. The unknowns are mainly for a frame. Unknowns are mostly it is slope and deflection are the unknowns, but mostly for the small problems which we do, mostly only the other than frames of sway, mostly only the slopes are the unknowns. And when we were students, more than two unknowns, it was very difficult to solve the equations within the time allotted for the examination. So three unknowns, okay, but not more than that at that time, because we did not have calculators. We were using slide rule, what you call slide rule. We were using logarithmic tables like that for all these. But when it comes to more than three, it was very difficult even for design engineers. So we remember this moment distribution method gave us ideas of when you are developing, let's say it's a multi-story building, if there is a span, there is a moment distribution to be done. We are not taking the whole spans of the multi-story building. What we did was we just considered only one story above, one story below, and then only one span to the left, one span to the right. And we did approximate moment distributions. And that's what we use for designs also. So this was a great development moment distribution method. And you may remember some of the curriculums in some universities. I do not know about your university curriculum, but in some universities, they have removed this Carney's method. Carney's method is a further development from moment distribution. Still, it is in our syllabus, KTU syllabus, still there, but I don't know about your syllabus. But I remember when we studied that, that was a method used by engineers. I remember we were given projects where this Carney's method was used for a big drawing sheets were spread in our rooms, big drawing sheets, and we were sitting and drawing the Carney's method values, writing the values, then standing up, going to the next joint like that. It was from one end of the room to other end of the room, the sheet was spread, and we were writing the values, balancing each joint, calculating the rotation factors for each rotation, contributions for each joint, then going to the next joint like that. It was done, and that was the result of number of days of work. That was what used by the design engineers. So it's a great development, moment distribution method. Later only, slope deflection, it is based on slope deflection method, but when it is more than two or three unknowns, it was very difficult, and because we did not have calculators, computers, there was no way to solve the equations more than three unknowns, except by written calculations, which took a lot of time. I just added another slide here, force method, displacement method. Probably some of you may not. In fact, in my career, I interviewed many students during final year project and during even degree, postgraduate, undergraduates, even PhD. I interviewed them for some of the job interviews like that. But when I ask them about the fundamentals of this, they don't have much idea. So please remember this for your benefit. I have written here, consistent deformation method is a force method. What they do is we form the equations based on the unknowns like the reactions or the joint moments. So you write down the equations and everything. And finally, it is solved by taking the compatibility conditions. So you develop the unknowns in terms of the displacements, and then you use the compatibility condition, just like a simple example is propped cantilever. Three-moment theorem also, it is again, we write the equations in terms of the joint moments. And finally, we use the compatibility condition to use that it is equal to using the moment area theorem. We are equating the intercept on the left side and intercept on the right side. That is how the three-moment theorem is developed. But just remember that these two methods are force method. These are the two methods which are in the undergraduate syllabus for essay 2 or 3, but these two are force method. But the other three methods, displacement method, slope deflection, moment distribution, Carney's method. At any problem, we start with all the displacement, writing the displacements, all the moments and everything in terms of the displacements, theta or rotation or displacement. Then finally, we use equilibrium equation to solve that. We use equilibrium equation. Slope deflection, we are using equilibrium at a joint. Moment distribution, we are balancing a joint. The Carney's method, same as moment distribution. So remember, these three are displacement method. Now the computer, this displacement method is same as stiffness method. And that is what the computer uses now. Even though initially computer developed the matrix methods developed based on force method, but there is a problem in force method because they can use different methods for different type of removing different redundancies like that. So stiffness method, whatever type of problem, it is the same approach. Therefore, computer prefers that. So even if it is a small truss, even if it is a 10-span truss with only 2 loads applied, computer takes all the joint displacements are the unknowns, but it's not a problem that just one click all the displacements and the internal forces are calculated. Just remember these fundamentals. Force method is consistent deformation and three-moment theorem. Displacement method is the other key. And then all these methods, computer uses the displacement method, and because any number of unknowns is not a problem for us. 1953, this important development, Soviet Union successfully built 7 massive skyscrapers dubbed the Seven Sisters of Moscow. 7 Sisters of Moscow. These are the skyscrapers. There are 7 Sisters of India, probably some of you may know. That is called the northeastern states like Mizoram, Assam, Nagaland, Manipur, like that. 7 states of the 7. They are called 7 Sisters of India. Those are great development by Fazlur Khan, 1955. He was employed in an architectural firm in Chicago, and he is the main person behind the skyscrapers structural development. Most innovative structural designs, tube structural systems, framed tube, trussed tube, X-bracing, bundle tube, tube in tube, shear wall, frame and rest. All these developed by Fazlur Khan when he started in the 90s. It's a great development. He's a famous person. He's a person who has contributed greatly to the development of structural designs for tall skyscrapers. I'm showing another slide here showing those structural systems. Evolution of structural system. Type 1, this is shear frame. Type 2, this is interacting system. Type 3, partial tubular system. And type 4, tubular system. You can get a lot of information on this from the websites, from the literature. You check anything. The basic information is available in the websites, especially in Wikipedia like that. Yeah, now we are coming to 1956. The paper Stiffness and Deflection of Complex Structures was published, and it introduced the name, that is when that name came, finite element method, 1956, which is still regarded as the first comprehensive treatment of method today, finite element method. When we were students, we did not even hear about this name. What we heard was till slope deflection, moment distribution, Carney's method, and we made some analysis based on that and did projects. Finite element method was not taught in the universities at that time. 1965, Nastran, that is where the structural analysis developed first. It is structural analysis done by NASA, US. And that program, this analysis is the foundation for all the structural analysis programs developed later, like STAT Pro, CSAM, SACS, SACS, like many programs which developed later. This is the fundamental thing. That is dividing the structure into finite elements. Depending upon the need for accuracy, the number of elements can be more, and we use different types of elements based on whether it is a plane frame, whether it is a solid frame, and all those things. 1969, they initiated the first commonly available software called Nastran. They called it because it is the company McNeil Swindler Corporation. So therefore, this is called MSC software. They call it MSC Nastran. That is 1969. That is the first generation of finite element analysis software. That is 90. So I'm talking about information age developments now. You can see Sydney Opera House. It was built in 1973. In fact, if we use calculations before that, it would have needed 10 years of human work for completing all the calculations and designs. But because this software is available and they used particular elements suited for this structure, different types of elements, plane frame, solid frame, and also the shell and plate, all different types of elements they used, and they saved almost 10 years of human work for this. 10 years of human work for consultancy was saved by this development of this finite element software. It was in 1973. Remember, I graduated in 1967. Yeah. At that time, NASA was just developed, still it was not available for the, generally it was not available. 1982, another great development is Autodesk introduced AutoCAD, which is still among the most widely used CAD programs used by structural engineers, AutoCAD. You know the purpose of AutoCAD. Every university, every engineering college uses this. That is a basic thing for it. At that time, when we were students, we were studying drawing, engineering, graphics by using all these fundamental basic methods like that. And then you know that these days engineers are familiar with all these type of programs like that. So there is no need of making all sorts of drawings by ourselves, just like we used to do in olden days. We can do everything by Autodesk. So developments later, the development of this behavior and structural behavior of and the understanding of material. That is one. See, understanding was developed of topics such as, concrete also. Great understanding was developed later. Fracture mechanics. That's a great development. Similarly, fracture mechanics is important for steel also. Earthquake engineering. It helped in structural analysis, improved a lot. Composite materials. It's not only one material, we can use composite materials for the construction. Temperature effects on materials. Dynamics and vibration control. When you are using buildings, constructing buildings where machinery are operating, the control of vibration and dynamics is important. Fatigue, creep, and others. So great understanding, great development came in all these areas, and that means latter part of the 20th century, they developed to a great extent. Yeah, I have about 5 minutes more. I'll be winding up soon. So the depth and breadth of knowledge now available in structural engineering, and the increasing range of different structures and the increasing complexity of those structures have led to increasing specialization of structural engineers. There are specializations in structural engineering in each, especially tall buildings, especially very challenging buildings for offshore oil and gas constructions, oil and gas floating constructions like that. Similarly, underwater constructions, similarly, long bridges, all those things, there are specialization of structural engineers there. Another important term that we use now is BIM. if a civil engineering graduate is the best thing, he gets a certificate on BIM, because every interview, any interview, all these interviewers are asking this: have you heard about BIM? Have you used BIM? Have you got a certificate on BIM? The terms building information model, is a great software. It's a great facility. It's a great facilitator that combines all the components of buildings into one. That means you can combine structural engineering and all the related things, whether it is bar bending, whether it is plumbing, whether it is electrical connections, or everything put together, all the extra piping, everything, all the extra paneling, all these things can be put together when you include it in BIM. I think I'm glad to tell you that our students are also making use of that. Today, BIM software programs are being used by structural engineers to improve structural documentation, minimize data errors, and coordinate various building models across multiple engineering disciplines to help achieve a better design output. That is today's stage. All of these historic milestones greatly contributed to the advancement of structural engineering. As this field advances, people can expect to benefit from structures with even greater structural efficiency and safety than what modern buildings have today. I just want to mention about two structures, unique structures. This is called Prelude. FLNG means floating liquefied natural gas facility. This is 488 meter long. This is the largest floating facility now. It is operating in Western Australia waters there at a water depth of around 250. The purpose is collecting all the gases, natural gases from the nearby resources, and then processing here to make it into liquid, then transport to wherever it is needed by using LNG carriers. And then there they will be processing, converting it into gas, and then supplying it to the customer. This facility is standing. It's only 2 years since it has been completed. This is a great masterpiece of structural engineering. It's not only is a floating facility, then every component is tightly packed. If you want to build such a facility in the land, it requires 10 times the floor area needed here. That is why it is constructed, it's floating. And you see, compared to a Boeing 747, which is only 71 meter long, this is about 7 times that length, 7 times. It's a very large. Name is Shell. It belongs to Shell company. Name is Prelude. You can Google that and find out these. Till that construction of that, the largest ship was Queen Mary, 345 meter. One more structure, you know about, everyone knows about this unique structure, Burj. It was called Burj Dubai. Now its name is Burj Khalifa Tower because Dubai had to sell it to Sultan Khalifa of Abu Dhabi like that. It's 830 meter tall. That's the tallest building now in the world. It's 160 stories. These are all masterpieces of structural engineering. You see here, let it be any structure, let it be any shape you want. You can build it, you can design it using the advancement of structural engineering now. Please remember, when you're dealing with architects, you have to be very cautious because architects may bring to us any shape which they want, which is pleasing to the customers. But structural engineers have to make sure that load is properly transferred to the members, to the components, and then it is transferred to the foundation. So it is very important for the structural engineer, when you're dealing with an architect, it is not just pleasing the customer, but you have to make sure that the structure is safe and it is stable, because architects will prefer to go for a very slender structures and all those things, but it is okay, but structural engineer has to make sure that it is safe and stable based on the analysis available and calculation. Now the challenges are there, no problem, let it be any challenges. We have got methods of analyzing such type of structures by using the particular special elements for that type of shapes and anything. The finite element analysis, you can get the desired accuracy. There are very, very accurate and very powerful programs Let it be any number of unknowns. With one click, you can get the solutions, and you can do static and dynamic analysis and everything, and you can arrive at the proper final design for that. This is, I'm just talking about the unique structures. Okay, now I come to the end of the presentation. I think I'm right in time. This is a structure. This is the library building in our College of Engineering. This is at the center of the top of the hill. It's a library building. There is, yes, at the bottom, yeah, bottom floor is housing the computer laboratories, and all the other floors are housing the library books and all the references and everything. Yes, yeah. And that's the end of my lecture. Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. I'll be glad to answer some clarifications there based on my knowledge and experience. So over to you, back to the coordinator. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. It was a very nice presentation. So before moving to the queries, dear participants, you can fill your feedback form in the link whatever is shared with you that is used for generating the certificate. And also your queries you can please type in the chat box. So first, sir, we have a query from Giri. He is again a final year student. So is there a suggestion, any suggestion for the final year projects for someone planning to do MS in structural engineering abroad? And again, he has one more question. He would like to strengthen his basics in the structural engineering. Suggestions on how to proceed. Any suggestion for the resources?
Excuse me, can I switch on? Can I close this file, presentation file?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. No issues.
Okay.
Should I question, sir?
Okay, can you repeat the question, please? Gautam, Dr. Gautam.
So it is a question from the, yeah, sure, sir. It is a question from the final year student Giri. Sir, any suggestion for the final year projects for someone planning to do MS in structural engineering abroad? And he also asked, he would like to strengthen his basics in the structural engineering. So any suggestion as to how to proceed and any suggestion for the resources?
Yeah, that means you are asking me for suggestions regarding the topics for MTech, master's topics or final year projects?
Final year BTech project.
Okay.
And also resources to improve his basics in structural engineering.
Courses for?
Some resources for improving the basics in structural engineering.
Oh, improving the basics in structural engineering. Okay.
Both questions, yeah.
Okay, just a minute. Okay, first of all, regarding the final year projects, I think it is very easy. We cannot say now what is now that the complete scenario has changed now because of the COVID. So actually post-COVID, the challenges for civil engineers will be not exactly the same as that we were having before. Now, what we were having before, now offshore structures, oil and gas structures was of great demand. Still it is of great demand even though the oil price has come down. The university where I was working before in Malaysia, the topics on offshore structures, oil and gas were on demand. So many of the students were taking final year projects related to that because immediately when they graduated, they were getting job offers at that time from oil and gas companies. You know, oil and gas companies, the salary was almost 3 times that of other companies which were working land-based companies like that. That was the demand at that time. But the basic thing is, what I would suggest is, if you're planning to go for higher studies abroad, the best method is, I think the best idea will be, you have many universities and there are rankings of the universities available in the websites. There are many types of rankings, QS ranking. QS ranking is one of the good rankings. You know which are the best universities in the world. You can go to those universities' websites, all these available, and you can find some very famous professors there. Under those professors, many PhD, MTech, and undergraduate students will be working. So those professors will have projects related to their areas of work, and these projects are funded by many companies like that. So in that, if you can, they will definitely reply to you. You can contact by sending a mail. It's not like in olden days by contacting. for contacting, you send an email. I'm sure most of the university professors, they will send you a reply. May not be there themselves, but their project team will be giving you a reply. So you can check the websites of all the famous professors all over the place. So for example, if your interest is in structural engineering, you can go to structural engineering, different areas. Currently, what are the areas they are working on? And you can contact them. I think sometimes I have seen some of my students, they contacted the professors and they got opportunities there. They want, seeing their interest, they invited them, provided a scholarship and absorbed them like that. So that is one way in which you can proceed. You can see good universities, the work they are doing will be of great demand now. That is one. But of course, you should have some interest in that area. A person with structural engineering interest, you can proceed in that way. But others, you have to specify in that area. One thing I can tell, structural engineering is of great demand now. I'm not saying that everybody should go for that. I know many consultants who have told me that even though there are many structural engineers working with them there, but very good structural engineers are still few. Very good means a person with good understanding is still rarely available. So if you have good basics, you will be always on demand. So that is what I would suggest. For taking the topics, you better refer to the best universities and see what is the work they are doing like that. Now everything is global. You should be able to do something related to that. And there should be a facility available also. There was another part of your question there, how to get good basics in structural analysis, correct?
Structural engineering, yes.
So good basics, if you're an undergraduate student, good basics you can get by regularly attending classes and also attending these NBTL courses, SWAYAM courses like that. There are so many courses like, basically, I mean, from, if you are regular in the class, then you get an interest into these subjects. So engineering mechanics and good idea of MOS, basic idea of engineering mechanics, rather than hating that subject, liking that subject, doing a lot of problems there, you can get ideas into, you can become a very good person with a lot of good fundamentals in structural analysis. Yeah, there is no shortcut. This hard work is needed.
Thank you, sir. So dear participants, yeah, we have another question. So all the participants, if you're having any queries, you can please put in the chat box. So another question from Akhil Nadar. Yeah. How competitive is Indian construction industry? Is it a good idea to launch a startup after gaining experience in India?
In fact, regarding Indian construction industry, I do not have much idea now because 2 years back only I returned from Malaysia. I was there in 15 years. I have not studied deeply about the construction industry now, but from my contact with some of the engineers visiting here, some of the engineers here, so everywhere, I mean, some of the contractors, some of my classmates visited us and they are managing some very big contracts of Government of India now that. So I think you need to make a feasibility study rather than just starting that. Any startup, you need to make a lot of studies now. And I know one thing, good civil engineers are always in demand, whether it is structural engineer or construction engineer or geotechnical engineer. Good civil engineers are always on demand. So make some studies like that. Don't take my opinion, just my opinion. Anything you need to make a feasibility study and proceed.
Okay, thank you, sir. So another question is from Achintya. He's a second-year student. So I want to pursue a career in structural engineering. Could you recommend books which I can read right now that can inspire me to become a good structural engineer?
Good structural engineer, I mean, there are very good books on fundamentals, like if it is concrete or structural analysis, there are good books by Devadas Menon, IIT Madras, standard books, and then by Menon and Pillai, then Professor P.C. Varghese. Those are all good books. And then for structural analysis, this we can say R.C. Hibbler. He gives a lot of information on, he gives a lot of videos also, a lot of practical problems into structural analysis. He has books on statics, dynamics. He has books on structural analysis and mechanics of structures. These are very good books. R.C. Hibbler, they are selling selling very well all over the world. Hibbler books with a very good sketches and practical problems like that. Indian books we know Devadas Menon, P.C. Varghese, Pillai and Menon. These are all good structural engineering books. But there are so many other books which which students are using for just doing some problems. I'm talking about these books which gives you some fundamentals also, basic ideas.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So next question is from Rishabh. He's also a third-year student. Is it good to go to a developed country, especially Japan, for higher studies?
I think my opinion is, if it is a challenging job, you should go to any place. Japan, yeah. So, I mean, you should be prepared if it's a challenging job. And Japanese, they are very well, they are famous for disciplinary jobs and disciplinary training and everything. I think you should go for any opportunity when you are able to get a challenging job there. And now everything is global. It's like a global village. The only thing is recently the flights have been affected. Once it is all become normal, I think you should be building fundamentals are same everywhere. If you have got good fundamentals and if you are a hardworking person, you can be successful anywhere.
So just a clarification, he was asking about the higher studies option in Japan. I mean, whether it is good to go for higher studies in Japan.
You are talking about higher studies in Japan?
Yes.
Now the only problem higher studies in Japan, the language is the only issue. But I know many students are going to Chinese universities now. Chinese universities, and many are going as professors there also. Language, if you can manage the language, if you can pick up the language at the earliest, there should not be any problem. But now all over, you can see the ranking. I think the ranking will give you a good criteria. The university's ranking by QS, it is international. So you know what is the rank of a particular university, whether it is Japan or Malaysia or India, how much rank what is its rank? India. That means in the ranking, if you look at the ranking, US universities come first, US, then Europe, then Australia, Singapore. That's the way it goes. So ranking, but just look, I think you can, this is all available in the website, international ranking of universities, region-wise and branch-wise, program-wise, everything is available. You can refer to that.
So next question is again from Giri. Which is more beneficial, studying in India or abroad? If abroad, which country is best to do MS structural engineering?
Oh, that's what I say. If you look at the structural engineering, if you take the category of structural engineering, you will see the best universities in the world in that ranking QS list. Some of the best universities in the world, maybe MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, it may be Texas, A&M, like that. Most of the big higher ranking universities come in US. US is a good place to go and study, but it's better that you come back after that because it's not a good place to bring up your children. But studying the subject, that's the best universities are in US. But you know, abroad or if you can get a scholarship, you should go abroad. It's always a good international experience. Yeah, it's a good international experience going abroad and studying. Even Malaysia, where my university, I worked for some time. Many students from NIT Calicut came there and succeeded. They did well and they got some very good job in Gulf, like that. So anywhere you get an opportunity, don't limit yourself to a very small job in a nearby town. Civil engineers are not supposed, it's not like olden days. It's not PWD is not the only place for civil engineers.
The next question is again from Achintya. So what do employers look for in students while hiring for jobs in structural engineering?
What do employers look for in students
while hiring for jobs in structural engineering?
Yeah, hiring for jobs in structural engineering. So structural engineering, there are jobs related to consultancy. Consultancy means design office, supervising the design, supervising the construction like that. At the same time, structural engineers want engineers for supervision of construction and checking the bar bending and all those things like that. But in everything, as structural engineering consultancy companies or as structural engineering construction companies, they are looking for engineers with some fundamentals in structural engineering. That means they should be able to tell us where is bottom bending moment, bottom tension, where is the bending moment that displays. When the software output comes, gives a negative value, a wrong value because of a wrong input, the engineer should be able to detect that. For example, a simple example, we know a cantilever, tension is at the top when the loading is down. Suppose you do it by a software and you get tension at the bottom, that means the engineer should be able to find out that a software engineer or a software person who does that software will not be able to understand that. But the engineer immediately knows that is wrong, something wrong with the input. So that is the basic idea. I mean, just simple problems, simple questions we ask during the interview, they should not be wavering. They should be very clear about that. For example, this one, what I said many times, I asked them, how do you say carryover factor is 1/2? What is the reason? Are you simply taking 1/2? What is the reason? Many students cannot understand. Many lecturers, when I interview many, they are not able to understand. Even sometimes, another question is, I ask some of them, is steel, is it concrete which is stronger than steel in compression? Many times they say yes, that is wrong. Steel is 10 times stronger than concrete in compression and tension. Only thing is steel is used for slender structures where buckling is a problem. Otherwise, steel is 10 times stronger. So, but if you ask them, the students have a wrong idea. They think concrete is stronger in compression and steel is stronger in tension. That's not correct. They should be very clear about that. They shouldn't be wavering. Yes, Dr. Gautam, anything?
Thank you, sir. Next, we have a question from our professor, Dr. Helen Santi.
Yeah.
Sir, could you please suggest some important elective subjects for structural engineering branch based on the current demand?
Yeah, elective subjects. Now, our university, they have already prescribed so many electives there. We need to just pick one or two from there. But based on the current demand, see, nowadays, yeah, our local demand, environmental, I'm not talking of structural engineering. What I say, waste disposal, environmental pollution, all these things are important topics now. But post-COVID, what I find, structural demand remains the same thing. See, this environment, waste disposal, drinking water, all these are important topics for civil engineering. But structural, I can say that the demand will never go down for offshore engineering, offshore structures. That demand will be still there because I know there are companies all over the world, even though the oil price has come down, they're still continuing and the oil price will bounce back and everything because these fossil fuels, the demand will continue for another 2 generations like that. So that is a great, it's good that we give them an elective with some basics in offshore wave hydrodynamics like that. That will be related to structural engineering. All other structural engineering topics are all standard. We are getting every fundamentals in the main curriculum core courses. But electives, that is what my suggestion, because my area specialization is that, but that is still of great demand. That is why I'm suggesting wave hydrodynamics, offshore structural engineering, offshore structures, floating structures like that. That's what my suggestion. That demand is still there. Demand has not gone down.
Okay, thank you, sir. So next question is from Anslia. She's a second-year student. So the Indian standards which we are learning here are different from standards which we are learning abroad. Will it affect our higher studies abroad?
No, it will not affect. Because even though different standards are there, some of the allowable stresses, some of the methods like elastic method, like limit state method, all those things are improving now. Every country is following that now. So therefore, it will not affect people. See, like there are many students, many engineers working in Gulf. You know, Gulf, Middle East, they are not following exactly one code. They are depending upon the company which is running that, depending upon the material which they are buying from, depending upon which company they are buying the materials, depending upon which country owns that company like that. So our engineers are able to cater to all those needs. It's very easy to adjust from one code to another code. It's no problem. There will not be any difficulty. Just because we learned in IS code, IS 456, IS 800 like that, there is no problem because we have the fundamentals. We are not just learning IS alone. We are learning the basics of concrete, basics of steel also we are learning. So therefore, there will not be any problem in adjusting to that. Our young engineers are easily adjusting to any demand.
So next question is actually not on structural engineering. Gurusamy is asking regarding the scope of geotechnical engineering.
Scope?
Yeah, scope of geotechnical engineering.
Oh yes, geotechnical engineering is of great scope now, especially geology, because recently all the drilling of oils and everything, the petroleum engineering, the geology and geomatics and geotechnical engineering, everything is of great importance now. See, if you are a good geotechnical engineer, you are of great demand now because every building, every multi-story building has to go to great foundations, pile foundation. There are a lot of things to be studied there. And especially in offshore engineering also, the geotechnical engineer is of great demand. Now there is another program has come on now, petroleum engineering is of great importance because they are drilling to 3,000 meters underwater for all this drilling and everything where resources are available. Geotechnical, if you like that, it is. But it depends upon whether you like that subject. If you like that subject, that's a very good area, geotechnical engineering. But it's good to be liking both structural and geotechnical. Is of great demand. Both.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Navya S. Ravi. Sir, after completing structural engineering, is there any best career option or job option in Singapore? And also, what is the scope of structural engineering as a structural engineer in Singapore?
After studying structural engineering, BTech,
yeah, MTech structural engineering.
Then?
Is there a best career option in the Singapore?
In Singapore?
Yeah, Singapore.
Yeah, career option Singapore. I think Singapore. I'm not sure about Singapore, but there is a good university there. Singapore University is very famous. It is high ranking. It's called National University of Singapore, NUS. It's a very famous university. Career option, you can check with the university websites. They may be advertising some of the project posts. If you they may be willing to take you as an MTech with an MTech degree into some of their projects where you can do your PhD also there. That's the career option. If you are for job option, I don't know, there are many opportunities there, but still you can be, because with when you are registered with LinkedIn, you get a lot of contacts. You can post your profile in LinkedIn, and where you'll be able to contact a lot of professionals in that later. Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So next we are having a question from a structural engineer, and he's also a parent of one of our students, Mr. Arun Kumar M. Do the structural engineering designers get the significances in the normal Indian construction industry?
Structural engineers, I think it's not only Indian construction industry. I think everywhere the trend is now global. Structural engineers are of great demand, and they get a lot of importance also, because nowadays everything is consultant. Consultant is not only architectural consultancy. Excuse me. It is not only architectural consultancy. A consultant, structural engineering consultant, he does everything, design, analysis, and not only that, he supervises that. So structural engineer is significant. This is the same thing with any country now. Internationally, it is the same thing. A consultant does everything. Construction is done by the contractor. There are some of the companies that do both. And there is another architect firm. So some other companies, they have everything. But structural engineer is a very important part of that. And he is significant, and he gets that recognition in India as well as other places. That's my opinion. Of course, that's my opinion. That's the impression that I get because I have all been in academics all my surveys. So
Thank you, sir. So we have one more question by Gurusamy. He's asking, is it good for studying soil mechanics from College of Engineering, Guindy, Anna University, affiliated to Anna University?
good. Is it good for studying?
Soil mechanics from College of Engineering, Guindy.
See, I should not be commenting on another course at another place, isn't it? But I don't know about the College of Engineering, Guindy is under Anna University, correct?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
University.
Affiliated under Anna University.
Yeah, Anna University. So I should not. This subject is good for studying. I mean, this subject, you mean solid? You're talking about which subject?
Solid mechanics, sir.
Yeah,
Studying.
solid mechanics, you should, that's a very important subject. You should be able to study from any college and under any person like that. Or using test books, you can study, or you can take NBTL courses or SWAYAM courses like that. But I should not say it is good to study in that college, this college, this college. If you ask me, I will say, come and study in my college. Dr. Anjali will say, come and study in VIT.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, one generic question, like it might be not pertaining to the higher prospects or higher studies prospects. See, why are we finding that an overall interest level in civil engineering, especially the new students who are coming up, right? An overall decrease in the number of intakes in civil engineering, especially in spite of being such a wonderful stream that we are learning. And plus, everybody is still fascinated with computer science. So what can we do? So one is, why are we losing interest? Second is, what can we do to make it still more prominent? So could you please share?
I am also seeing that. I am also observing that. In my college also, computer is the first demand.
Yes,
but
sir.
There always, NIT, when I was teaching there, at one time, civil engineering was the greatest demand. Many students who got computer did not join that. They joined civil engineering. So, and what I find is, right from the beginning, civil engineering demand does not fluctuate much. Generally, all the engineering demand has gone down now because there is more demand for BSc Science, BSc Physics, BSc Chemistry, BA, more demand for BA in arts, literature like that than engineering now. It's not like olden days. Olden days, it was either medicine or engineering. It's not like that. Generally, demand for engineering has come down. But among that, I find computer is the top now. But civil does not fluctuate much because I know one thing, civil engineers have to retire. Bridges and multi-story buildings and all the structures have to be maintained. Even though no new projects are coming, we need civil engineers to maintain that, to maintain all those bridges, roads, multi-story buildings, everything. There will be demand for civil engineers, but not that much as computer. But it is a small sinusoidal variation, civil, changes little. Our college also, after computer, we got maximum for civil.
Okay, sir.
Electrical and electronics are much less.
Yeah.
Mechanical also is coming down, but I don't know. It is it's a seasonal variation, I should say. Computer engineers are getting jobs all over the world. That is the reason. So I am. That's my understanding. Thank you.
That's what similar trend is seeing here also, and because of which we are also thinking of more and more interdisciplinary aspects. So bringing in computers also, or computer science, or IoT to civil engineering. So in that aspect, could you please suggest a few specializations where it would be better that we'll have hardcore civil, at the same time interdisciplinary courses like IoT and other things would be clubbed.
Yeah, that you can bring as elective also. Just a moment. See, our university, KTU, recently they revised the curriculum. So there they have introduced now, even civil engineering graduates, they can do minor in computer engineering. Civil engineering degree, but they get some minor degree or certificate in computer or electronics like that. So there is a provision by KTU, the new curriculum, they have introduced that. So as you said, multi-speciality, IoT, artificial intelligence, and all these things, gradually, if you can bring it into this as an elective in the final year, that also good. But it depends on your university's curriculum committee. They have to make necessary revisions based on that, isn't it?
Okay.
But in any engineer now, any engineering, now the knowledge of artificial intelligence and computer, that's a must now. That is something which is needed. So I think I prefer to be, I don't know, if I advise better to be a basic core engineering, civil or mechanical or electrical, with a very good knowledge in artificial intelligence, necessary computer expertise. See, I can use computer just like any normal student. I can do a lot of programs in Excel and all this because I'm using that every day. That much knowledge is needed for everyone. More than that, I do not know, Dr. Anjali.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you for sharing the experiences and viewpoints, sir. So now I would
One
request.
second, ma'am.
Yes,
Just
sir.
before that, sir. Sir, actually, some of my students had asked me some questions. That is actually regarding like offshore engineering, sir. I mean, offshore structures. Especially some of our universities are having offshore structures. So, in offshore jobs, whether I mean, offshore structure students will be preferred more, or whether structural engineering students will be having the same preference.
No, offshore jobs, actually, if you, offshore engineering, if you have taken that final year project elective on offshore engineering, naturally you'll get a preference during an interview. But basic offshore also, basically it is structural engineering. Offshore, the only difference is that in addition to wind and earthquake load, you study about wave load also. That is the only additional things. So you have to study more about the waves. And so if you have taken a final year elective or final year project in doing that, some of the companies which do offshore engineering, if they get interview for if they get application from a structural engineer and offshore engineer, when they interview them, they may ask some fundamentals about that. They may prefer the person with the offshore electives. But it all depends upon, it's not the project you do or the elective you take. It all depends upon the person. A person should be willing to, he should be able to speak comfortably in English, able to express, able to have some fundamentals. That is what impresses most of the employers. So it's not it's not the certificate alone, but what is important is whether it's wavering, are you able to answer the fundamental question correctly, because they know that he'll be able to perform very well.
Okay, sir. Thank you. So there is one more question. So it's from Arun Kumar Mariappan. He's a structural engineer. And his question is, why the modern techniques are not popular in practice and mostly done for academic purposes only? For example, composite structures, FRC, etc. So he's not, I mean, implementing in practical scenario.
I did not understand the question very well.
So,
what was the
yes,
question?
sir. So the question is why the modern techniques are not popular in practice and mostly done for academic purposes only. So that means why are these not considered for practical level applications is what he meant.
Like composite structures.
Which are the one not applicable? Which are the one not applied? We study, whatever we study are being practiced also. Yes.
What is
can you say one example? Which is the one
what he's trying to ask is regarding the composite structures, FRC and all. Maybe at least in Indian aspects he's asking.
The quality of construction, you mean?
Not quality, the composite structures.
Composite structures.
Yeah.
You see here, one thing I can tell you, there are a lot of researches going on in concrete, high performance concrete, and using cementless concrete, a lot of these things. But in actual construction, they are just worried about this is all research stage. Even if you say we can reduce cement, there is no need of cement like that. When it comes to actual practice, based on our experience and everything, we are very much particular about the high performance concrete. So we naturally go for the traditional one. So the other things on research, even though academicians are doing the research, it will take a long time before which they will start actually practicing it, because they are worried the structure may collapse or the structure may not perform very well, because it is still on research stage. We can do something on research, but it gets lot of proof and evidences before they actually a contractor will implement that. Yes, that is true.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. And we'll move on to the last question. It's again asked by Giri. So Giri's question is, could you please suggest for softwares that has to be skilled by a civil engineer? Common softwares.
Common software. I think for structural analysis and MOS and everything, I know you have Start Pro and other software like that, but a simple one, you can verify the answers and everything quickly by using the freely available Mastan. Mastan is very easily available. You can check your the problems that you are doing daily by using that software. It's a very powerful program. It's a free one, Mastan, M-A-S-T-A-N. And then you should have basic knowledge in Microsoft Excel. It's a very powerful program, even though it is not as strong as MATLAB. MATLAB also is good if you can know it, but for your everyday purpose, Microsoft Excel is very powerful. Just one click, you get all the things, all the designs, everything immediately adjusted to whatever value you change there. In fact, I'm very happy about Excel. I do everything, do that for anything and everything. I do Microsoft Excel. Very powerful. In olden days, for my PhD at that time, whatever work we did 3 years for a PhD, we can get it done by one click now in Microsoft Excel. That's the difference now. And that's software, I think. Other knowledge, basic knowledge, CAD knowledge, basic BIM, if you can get a training into BIM, Tekla, all those things will be additional things what the employers will be looking for. Not just the basic undergraduate degree alone. Some internships and trainings will always help you. Get maximum number of trainings and internships and certificates and NBTL courses. Don't waste your time like that. You can play, you can run, you can spend your time with everything, enjoying your teenage, but for your career, you need to concentrate, you need to focus on your studies, and you need to build up your career. And the most important, I believe, trust in a great God. Trust in a great God. It's not because of your intelligence you are surviving now. It's because of the mercy and grace of a great God. Believe that always. You are not an accident in this world. You are the creator. You are a special creation of a great God. So He will provide for you. He has provided for you. Remember, with how many students all over the world, how many in the villages who are more intelligent than you. Yet you got the provision, you got the fortune to attend a university and get a degree and proceed. So be thankful to God always, and thankful to all the people, parents and the lecturers and the professors who train you. God bless you all.
Thanks a lot, sir. Those wonderful words will be valued always, sir. Thanks a lot. So now I request Ragashri. Ragashri?
Yes.
Yeah. Kindly felicitate our renowned speaker.
It's my proud privilege that I've got this opportunity to felicitate our eminent speaker. And to begin with, I would also like to thank our management to let us conduct this event successfully. Our Dean of School of Civil Engineering, our beloved conveners, Dr. Gautam Sarang and Dr. Anjali Gopakumar, and of course our eminent speaker, John Kurian sir. So how beautifully you could start and weave the happenings of civil engineering in a chronological order, starting from Egypt, the pyramids, to the Renaissance period, to the Eiffel Tower, to the latest happening right now, the marvels that have been made. And this shows and beautifully shows us how civil engineering and structural engineering has grown per se, and how the advent of softwares have made our life much more easier. So every student craves for something, craves for the personal insight that a teacher has, and that is what something a student wants to learn from a faculty, more than a bookish knowledge. This was completely fulfilled for us as a student today, with your valuable insights from the time when you did your pursuit, to the essential working tips that we require, the fundamental concepts that we should remember, to how to manage the architects who are more design oriented, and how to adapt them to our system. What more can a student ask? So we completely look forward to have such interactions more and more with you in the coming future. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ragashri, for the beautiful and wonderful felicitation. And thank you, sir. And thank you all for participating in the webinar series. And please keep in touch with sir for any reference or any, further queries or even doubts that you need to clear. Because I know that all our students have a lot of dilemmas in future, like how to make sure that they get what they need. So I think sir will be always a helping hand for all our students. From both of us and from the entire battalion of VIT Chennai, we extend a heartfelt gratitude towards you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir, for joining us.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Anjali. Thank you, Dr. Gautam, and all the participants. God bless you all.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Shall we all have a group photo? All of you, can you please turn on your cameras?
Yeah. Could you please turn on your camera? We shall have a virtual photo. Thank you all. And I also hope that all of you have, filled the feedback form. This is for your EAT certificate. So kindly fill the feedback form. Thank you all. Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
you for attending.
Have a great day, all of you. And we'll be having our last webinar series on 29th of October, same time. So another eminent speaker will be talking to all of us. He's an engineer working as a project consultant in UAE, in Kuwait, for a longer period of time. So he will be expressing the real concerns of a recruiter, and he'll be talking about his experience in various firms that he has worked at. So see you all then. So next, our sixth webinar will be on 29th of October, same time. And the eminent speaker is Engineer Hari Kumar, and he'll be talking about quality and applicability needed in a civil engineer based on a recruiter's perspective. So this will be more important for you for your future job and other perspectives. Okay, so have a great day. Thanks all once again for joining.
Thank you. Thank you.